Hello, this is Stephen Childs, The Way of Fairness. I just watched a video. It was a short talking about how there's no first human. There's not a first human being. So he explains how with evolution, if you go back to our great grandfather back far enough, it's fish in the ocean or something similar more similar to fish than to humans. So the first grandparent would have been when there was the first species that had gender. So there was a grandfather and a grandmother. So I'm not going to go back before that point. That's far enough for the purpose of explaining how extinction and separate species work. So there's not a first human being, but there's a first group of human beings. And they were the first group that had split off from the species they diverged from. It would have been the common ancestor with the chimps, the common chimp and the bonobo. So we have a common ancestor with them, and the earliest human when they were identical, they split into different regions. The ancestor of the common chimp and the bonobo would have been a single species. And so the first humans moved to a different geographical location. They were separated by distance. There was no offspring being created from either group. So over time, the group that became human had diverged far enough that it was very rare for an offspring to be produced from the other group. We were not modern day humans at this time. You see, we were the ancestors of both chimps and humans. So then the separate species had begun, and it was what became the human. And the parents, I'm going to go back to present day time. So a male and a female human can have offspring. They have a child. And then it's not a different species, but it's not the exact same species. It's very slightly different. And so extinction is with the slightly different older version of human, the parents. So when they pass on, that slightly different species is extinct. And this is going on with other humans in the group. With humans, it's going on all over the world with 8 billion of us now. So it's an over time thing. And the new generation, if you, let me just explain it this way. If you go way into the future, far enough, the modern day human of that time period would be so diverged from the present day human that they wouldn't be able to have offspring. But it would still, the ancestor would still be the human. So we could define them as a different species if we want. The idea here is to get an understanding of what the words are actually about. So like with the dog, the ancestor was a wolf, and the modern day wolf is slightly different than the common ancestor of the dog and the wolf. The dog happened from the domestication of wolves, and that specific group of new, slightly different wolf than the parent wolf that died and with the tribe of humans And then the pups, or the new ones, they kept those. And over time, they became all the different species of dogs. And the wolf is still here. The missing link to the ancestor of the dog, it still exists. It's the modern day wolf. It's still alive. It's not extinct. So see how if you don't really think about what the words are about, you confine yourself to what they mean in general, and you're not seeing the big picture, like with the wolf and the dog, and how the dogs came from a wolf. It was a wolf. It was in the wolf species, the way we define species now. Rather, you see what I'm saying? And if the two species can't produce offspring together, then they're separate species. But wolves can produce offspring, so they're not completely diverged. So with that as a background for what I'm going to talk about next, is this misunderstanding of Jewish people in the geographic region Israel. It's as far south as Egypt, basically, and so it's extremely far south, and it's been accepted by people that really want to accept the truth that the white people came from the extreme northern latitudes because of a lack of vitamin D. Whereas, like with the Indian tribe that, like Eskimo, they get enough vitamin D from their diet. They didn't need to become white, even though they're extreme far north. So it seems to be part of the picture is that we need to have white skin to produce more vitamin D when we're in the far north areas with clothes covering our body and so forth. So there's the white Jewish people. There are Jewish people that are not completely white-skinned, because the people that were in that area didn't have white skin, and they have offspring together. And because the new Jewish people are not all white, we're the original Jewish people that migrated from the north. They either would have came south from the Ukraine area and Georgia area, and then on south, or from Greece and that area of the Mediterranean with the ocean in between. I forget which one, but you can look on the map and see what I'm talking about, where there's two different paths that could have resulted in white people arriving in the geographical area where Israel is. Also, along coastlines, you have people migrating much sooner because they were fishing people, and they traveled all around the coast, all around the world. They came to Americas from Asia with boats. So there's another, like, there's people that use boats to get to Australia and Indonesia. See what I'm saying? So there's more ways to migrate than just across the land bridge. When a big migration of white people walked over the ice onto the continent of America, Alaska area, across the Bering Strait. So the white people in Israel that we call Jewish, along with the mixtures of other non-whites that we call Jewish, because they have a maternal connection from the mother, they're not all totally white like they were in the first place. This is somewhat speculative, using common sense. So there are Jewish people that insist like their original land was there in Israel. And they don't even consider that there were dark-skinned people there first. Them's fighting words, you know. To say that there were dark-skinned people there in Israel before the white people got there. But of course there was. Because we went from Africa, north, and then from far north turning white, back toward the coast of Africa, Israel, and migration with boats happened into the Americas. So, there are going to be a lot of people who want me dead for speaking the truth. And I'm going to argue that if we don't use actual truth to determine the winner of these arguments, then anything can be your position. It doesn't matter how ridiculous it is, because then might makes right. Right doesn't make might. Well, just wait and see what happens. I'm arguing that right makes might. So the people that are arguing from actual truth, and we're not hard-headed about it, I'm like, show me some evidence of that what I'm saying isn't true, and I'm really glad to find out, because my purpose is to understand why humans are where they're at, why they are the way they are, and how long ago did it happen. So we have a mixture of qualities. We have altruism, and we have the opposite of altruism, selfishness, greed. So we have empires that want to conquer the world. And we're loyal. We have loyalty is one of our qualities. We're loyal to our own group. And so the loyalty to the group and the survival of that group becomes more important than what the actual truth is. So they lie to benefit them. Telling the truth becomes less important than survival of that tribe. That's also within our genetics, the tribalism thing. And all of this creates competition and improvement of species and so forth in the other species as well as in the human animal. Now, there are people that want me dead because I call humans animals. Wait and see, because I'm arguing from actual truth, and I'm talking about words that point toward actual truth. So by animal, I mean biological animal. And when I'm talking about species, I'm talking about biological species. Well, I don't know of any other word, but see, we define the words. Words get adopted to point towards what's actually true. So the words aren't the thing in themselves. And now with quantum mechanics and non-locality, is the thing in itself the thing in itself? It's like we've proven there's no local reality. So the refrigerator behind me as a specific item is not real. It's only real if you look at it from its fundamental wave, the one wave that's all things, the one. So that's what we are first of all. Everything, every rock, every planet, every animal, every fish, every cloud is that wavelength. So I was listening to a video the other day that I found very interesting. I think it was Roger Penrose. And he's talking about these two equations that mean so much in our world. And they're very simple. E equals mc squared. So c squared is a constant. And E equals m. So energy equals mass. Plus a constant with the side of the mass. That's really interesting. So that energy and mass are a form of something prior to both. The wave. This one wave. So we don't even know what the one wave is, because we can just see a bunch of different waves so far. We can't see a unifying wave. the unifying field theory. So the other equation is the equation of energy in electromagnetic radiation. Radio waves on up to gamma rays. So radio waves have a very long wavelength. So the longest possible wavelength would be the width of the universe, because that's as wide as it can be. That's as long as the wavelength can be, because there's no length beyond that. So it depends on whether there's a limit there to how long the wave can be. I know from common sense that what I'm saying is true. So prove me wrong. Then I'll know something more. So I'm assuming that it's true, what I'm saying. And I've never heard anybody else talk about that. So I got curious, what's the longest wavelength? And it tells you they're very long, some of them. So I thought, what's the maximum length? Well, it couldn't be any longer than the length of the universe. There you go. Okay, so E equals the frequency of the wave. Frequency is wavelength. It's another, frequency is how often that wavelength repeats in time. So if the wavelength is 1 meter and it repeats every second, it's 1 meter per second. So the wave, the energy equation, I can't remember the guy's name.